Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving straight into this wild moment because Stephen A. Smith just stepped into something huge on national TV, and the whole thing went sideways real fast. So check this out. Stephen A. Smith recently rolled up to The View to talk politics, and honestly, why they called him for that panel is a mystery by itself. But he showed up, sat down, and suddenly he's giving his take on the Democrats, elections, and all that heavy talk. Then the host brought up the comments he made about Democratic Senator Mark Kelly, and that's where everything got messy. On his show, Straight Shooter, Stephen A. went on this dramatic rant after Senator Mark Kelly and a few colleagues made a statement telling military members that they must follow lawful orders. Super basic, nothing complicated, right? But Stephen A. somehow twisted that message into something totally different, claiming they were basically telling troops to ignore the President of the United States. People watching were like, what is he talking about right now? He made headlines everywhere for that take. We even covered it here before. So you'd think by the time he sat down on The View, maybe he'd cooled off, listened to some feedback, maybe even realized he misunderstood the whole thing. Folks expected he'd hear some pushback, maybe even acknowledge that he misread what Senator Kelly meant, because the message itself was pretty straightforward. But nah, in classic Stephen A. fashion, instead of stepping back, he doubled down hard. No hesitation, no second guessing, just doubled right back into the same interpretation that had everyone confused in the first place. It was wild energy. Take a listen to what this guy said on The View right here.
Some really sharp criticisms of Democrats in the election for having sort of lost touch with the issues the voters cared about. How are you feeling now, a year into Trump, and what do you make of this discussion around affordability and him saying it seems like it's a scam from Democrats?
Well, that's rhetoric on his part. There's nothing surprising or unpredictable about that. You can see that coming from a mile away because he has to say that right now because it's an issue and a concern for the American people, and he wants to act as if there is no concern because everything he's doing is just so beautiful and so marvelous and what have you. But in the end, the Democrats give the credit where credit is due at this particular moment in time. I think that they've learned from some of their mistakes anyway. When you see what happened in New York with Mike Adani, when you see what happens in New Jersey with Cheryl as the governor, when you see what happens with Spanberger in Virginia, clearly there's something that's going on within the Democratic establishment that's saying, let's focus on real issues that are pertinent to the American people. Let's make sure we articulate ourselves appropriately so we don't lose sight of what the message should be. Leading up to the election, they did just that. And I thought they handed him the election as opposed to him actually winning it. Now they're forcing him to play ball and figure out a way to beat them because they're coming and they're gaining some momentum. We'll see what happens.
Now, let me just remind you that Pete Hegseth said in 2016, I do think there have to be consequences for abject war crimes. If you're doing something that is just completely unlawful and ruthless, then there is a consequence for that. That's why the military said it won't follow unlawful orders from their commander-in-chief. Now, given the fact that the secretary himself said that, I'd love to give you the opportunity to perhaps change your position on what you said.
I'm not changing a thing. I didn't stutter once. You want to say loud and wrong. Well, you could call it loud and wrong all you want to. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine. Here's the reality of the situation. First of all, I don't give a damn what Pete Hegseth has to say because I will tell you right now, he was never qualified for the job. When you talk about DEI and eradicating that, excuse me, what was he doing hosting Fox News on the weekend and all of a sudden he's the defense secretary? Please give me a break. I don't care what he has to say. Let me get that out the way. As it pertains to Mark Kelly, what I was talking about is military. What I did was get on the phone with family and friends who have served in the military. And I said, we're not civilians. This is not the court of law. You can be implicated for implying something if you are a former military member or you are a present military member. It wasn't what Mark Kelly said. It's the fact that he was a combat Navy pilot who served in the military who would tell folks ignore an order when it could get. I said illegal. I'm talking about illegal.
I understand that. He said you don't have to follow an unlawful order, and that is in the military code of conduct. I'm saying to you, hold on.
Which I'm aware of. But it didn't sound like you were aware of that.
Well, no. I disagree with you. I had two governors, by the way, text me to tell me I was wrong, and they agree with you.
And I had two senators that reached out to me and said you weren't wrong.
Well, Mikey Sherrill did say that the reason they felt the need to put that out is they were constantly being approached by people in the military saying we're being put in really uncomfortable situations. That to me is a little more relatable when you're a veteran yourself. But I'm saying let me say this real quick or wait till we come back. All I'm saying is this: if you're a member of the military, I'm looking at the soldiers are saying don't get yourself in trouble, let somebody else do it, don't you do it, because it ain't gonna work for you.
Excellent. So you just heard that clip, right? And as most of you already know, D.L. Hughley is not exactly Stephen A. Smith's biggest supporter. Let me make something clear real quick. I know some people, maybe even some watching our show, aren't fans of D.L. Hughley either. And that's totally fine. I'm not here trying to hype him up or campaign for him. What I am doing is reacting to what he said about Stephen A. Smith and the wild stuff A has been pushing on this topic, because this situation has gotten messy, and DL came with a response that definitely turned heads. So I stumbled across this clip, basically a mashup of everything DL Hughley said about Stephen A.'s take. And let me tell you, he went in. He didn't hold back at all. He came straight at Stephen A. with the kind of energy that made people sit up and pay attention. For anyone who hasn't heard DL Hughley's reaction to Stephen A. Smith's comments on The View and his take on Senator Mark Kelly, I'm gonna play what he said. Listen closely to DL Hughley right here, because this response had the whole internet talking. In response to that, of course, you see Sunny Hostin read what Pete Hegseth, the current Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War, said. Now, let me just remind you that Pete Hegseth said in 2016, "I do think there have to be consequences for abject war crimes. If you're doing something that is just completely unlawful and ruthless, then there is a consequence for that. That's why the military said it won't follow unlawful orders from their commander-in-chief." Virtually the same thing that Senator Kelly said that sparked Stephen's rant on his social media page. It's ironic that the first thing Stephen A. would do would be assail Hez. Well, basically saying, he was a podcaster who became Secretary of State. What the ironic thing is, Stephen A. Smith's is a broadcaster who thinks he could be president. But the fact that being loud and wrong when given a chance with new information to make a different decision, to be nuanced, what he decided to do was double down. And it's interesting because he believes obviously that being loud and wrong is leadership. Stephen A. Smith, and one is Admiral Alvin Hazy, a black man who was a 4-star admiral who was basically in charge of Southcom. This would have been his area, the Caribbean. Allegedly, Admiral Hazy was given an opportunity. He was basically told by Pete Sess what he wanted to do, and this admiral, who had been in the Navy 37 years, achieved the highest rank possible, decided rather than to obey an order he was conflicted by, that he believed was problematic, that he believed might even been illegal. Rather than do that, he walked away and resigned. This is a tale of two black men, one who believes that being loud and wrong is leadership, Stephen A. Smith, and one is Admiral Alvin Hazy, who believes that refusing to do wrong is leadership. In this world where loud is the loudest voice in the room, where people commit to a path and decide hell or high water, we're going to go this way regardless of what damages it does. In this world that exists like that, don't be a Stephen A. Smith. So you heard his comments. Now here's where I'm at with all this. I don't think DL Hughley said anything groundbreaking by pointing out that Stephen A. Smith was clearly wrong on this issue. That part was already obvious to a lot of people. What DL was really tapping into was a character pattern he sees in Stephen A. And that's where things get interesting. And look, DL Hughley has had his own clashes with Marcellus Wiley, who's a friend of this channel and someone I respect. So I'm not choosing sides here, I'm strictly talking about what he said regarding Stephen A. Beyond the whole cultural angle, DL's point was simple. Stephen A. just struggles with being wrong. He hates it. Even on The View, the second they challenged him, he snapped into this super defensive mode, and you could see it all over his face. People like him, when they know they're exposed on a topic, tend to double down. And here's why I think he reacted so sharply. Politics is not Stephen A. Smith's comfort zone. It's not his playground. When someone steps into a field where they're not confident, those insecurities show, and the moment they get questioned, they go into survival mode. If that panel had gone after one of his sports takes, he wouldn't have reacted like that at all. But politics, that's where he gets touchy. And let's be real, and Stephen A. hears the noise. Search his name next to the word politics and look at what most people are saying. The majority think he doesn't know what he's talking about. And the shows that bring him on, places like Valuetainment, Sean Hannity, Chris Cuomo's show on News Nation, I genuinely think they invite him because he makes for entertaining TV, not because they take his political insights seriously. They let him talk because it creates a spectacle, not because they believe he's some political authority. But here's the bigger picture. We're living in some real high-stakes times in the United States right now. You've got one group of Americans fully backing the administration, believing the president is carrying out exactly what he promised during his campaign. Then you've got another group saying, okay, we get it, you're the president, but you still have to stay within the law. And that's a valid point. Nobody's denying he holds the office, at least now, though depending on how the midterms go, who knows?
Impeachment talk could pop up again, but that's a whole different story. No one is trying to take anything away from the president, but he still has to act within the law, period. When you listen to how he reacted to Senator Mark Kelly's statement, it almost sounded like, how dare you try to question me? The thoughts and stones in that attitude plays right into the worries a lot of Americans already have about this administration. So when someone like Stephen A. Smith jumps out yelling and making noise on TV, people are going to push back hard.
And it's not just about him being a black Republican voice, it's because these are serious times and folks aren't playing with misinformation right now. When a senator who served in the Navy says you must follow the rule of law and that troops don't have to obey unlawful orders, you can't be the guy trying to scold him for saying something correct. That's reckless. And we can't afford that kind of wild commentary during moments like this. This isn't some fun debate about Michael Jordan versus LeBron James. These are real issues that affect real lives. We need people to speak with clarity, not people out here shouting whatever pops into their head just to spark attention or go viral. We're living in a moment where whoever says the wildest thing gets the biggest spotlight, whether they're on the left or the right, and you can spot the grifters on both sides all day long. What we actually need is some grounded voices, people willing to give an honest breakdown of the truth instead of chasing clicks and trying to create headlines. Stephen A's comments here don't even seem rooted in anything real, and I don't know what point he thinks he's defending. In the first video we did, we asked viewers with military experience to weigh in, and almost every person, men and women who served or are still serving while the mines spur, said the same thing: you are not meant to obey unlawful orders. So again, what is he talking about? It feels like Stephen A is desperate to please the president, almost like he thinks he's getting offered a position or some special role in the future. Usually when someone is bending over backwards for a politician, they're trying to gain something, maybe a favor, maybe help with a business interest. But in this case, what is Stephen even working toward? What's the purpose behind all this extra energy? The moment we start tossing respect out the window, everything turns into chaos, and society starts feeling like a jungle. We can speak on these issues without diving into negativity or throwing out reckless comments. I'll always show respect for the office, even if I don't agree with the person holding it, because the position itself is bigger than individual opinions. That's the example we should be setting, showing people that the office deserves a certain level of respect, and the way we talk about leaders should reflect that. This isn't about liking someone or not, it's about holding ourselves to a standard that keeps things stable and grounded. These are my thoughts. Drop yours in the comments.